lunch together, we had meetings together, along with his very capable staff. And I think we've come up to some pretty good solutions and conclusions. And we'll be working a little bit after this, and then I assume you're going back home.
Yes, sir.
This is a quick stop, in and out. But we appreciate you being here, and we are a friend of Israel, as you know. I would say that I'm by far the best president that Israel has ever even thought of seeing. And it's an honor to be so, and to be so thought of. Many friends in Israel. They are not in an easy area. It doesn't go easy, but we are helping them. And likewise, they've been helping us very much. And so we'll see how it all works out. But we had great discussions today, I think, on the obvious subject of Iran, and also the less obvious subject with respect to Israel, and that's trade. And I think the Prime Minister is going to tell you a little bit about trade and what they're doing for the United States. So I want to thank you all for being here. Thank you very much. And
thank you.
Benjamin, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Donald. Thank you. Mr. President, I want to first thank you for inviting me again to the White House. You've been a remarkable friend of the State of Israel. You stand by us. You're standing with us. You are a great, great champion of our alliance. And you actually do the things that you say you do. And I think that people respect that enormously. I certainly do, and the people of Israel do. And I think the Jewish people do as well. We just saw your representative in the Department of Justice fighting anti-Semitism, standing up for Israel in international forums. I just want you to know from the heart, it's deeply, deeply appreciated. As you said, we had the opportunity to talk today about many subjects. First, if I can mention tariffs, it's a subject of some interest today. I can tell you that I said to the President a very simple thing. We will eliminate the trade deficit with the United States. We intend to do it very quickly. We think it's the right thing to do. And we're going to also eliminate trade barriers, a variety of trade barriers that have been put up unnecessarily. And I think Israel can serve as a model for many countries who ought to do the same. I recognize the position of the United States. It says, you know, we're allowing other countries to put tariffs on us, but we don't put tariffs on them. And, you know, I'm a free trade champion, and free trade has to be fair trade. And I think that's basically the position that you have put forward, Mr. President. We are going to eliminate the tariffs, and rapidly. I had the opportunity to speak to Secretary Lutnick yesterday. We talked about how we could effect this quickly, and I hope to bring the solution very quickly. We're not talking about intentions. We're not talking about you know, just words. We're talking about results. And those results are going to come. That's the first.
Thank you very much. It's very nice.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. President, what about the hostages here?
Well, I
What about the hostages?
Let him finish.
didn't finish. I'm going to begin. We spoke about not only the hostages, but about Gaza. The hostages obviously is a human story of just unbearable agony. I speak to the families. I spoke to them yesterday. Spoke to another one when I was in Hungary before I came here. I speak to them every day. They're in agony. The hostages are in agony, and we want to get them all out. Steve Witkoff, was, President Trump's very able representative, helped us get a deal that got 25 out. We're working now on another deal that we hope will succeed. And we're committed to getting all the hostages out, but also eliminating the evil tyranny of Hamas in Gaza, and enabling the people of Gaza to freely make a choice to go wherever they want. I mean, they should have that choice. And the President put forward a vision, a bold vision, which we discussed as well, including the countries that might be amenable and are amenable to accepting Palestinians of their free choice if they choose to go there. And I think that's the second thing that we discussed. But the hostages came right on top. We also discussed the situation in Syria. We've had neighborly relations with Turkey that have deteriorated, and we don't want to see Syria being used by anyone, including Turkey, as a base for attack in Israel. Turkey is country that has a great relationship with the United States. The president has a relationship with the leader of Turkey. We discussed how we can avoid this conflict in a variety of ways, and I think we can't have a better interlocutor than the president of the United States for this purpose. And of course, we also discussed Iran. Look, we're both united in the goal that Iran does not ever get nuclear weapons. If it could be done diplomatically in a full way, the way it was done in Libya, I think that would be a good thing. But whatever happens, we have to make sure that Iran does not have nuclear weapons. That's the end of my speech.
Mr. President, what is your
We're having direct talks with, wait a minute, wait. We're having direct talks with Iran, and they've started. It'll go on Saturday. We have a very big meeting, and we'll see what can happen. And I think everybody agrees that doing a deal would be preferable to doing the obvious. And the obvious is not something that I want to be involved with, or frankly, that Israel wants to be involved with if they can avoid it. So we're going to see if we can avoid it. But it's getting to be very dangerous territory. And hopefully those talks will be successful. And I think it would be in Iran's best interest if they are successful. We hope that's going to happen. And we had just a lot of good talks on a lot of things. I appreciate very much what you said about the tariffs. We've been ripped off and taken advantage of by many countries over the years, and can't do it anymore. Just can't do it anymore. We can't be the stupid people anymore. And it's all because of the people that sat in this seat right here. Not your seat, but this seat. They allowed things to happen to our country that they shouldn't have allowed to happen on trade and other things, many other things. I mean, look at what's happened with our last president, where he allowed millions of people to come into our country with an open border. Who would want an open border? How stupid was that? But he allowed millions and millions of people, and of the millions, and I think it was 21 million people, but let's say 3 of them were serious criminals, serious murderers and drug dealers and gang members and people from jails. All the jails emptied out right into our country, right along the open border on Mexico, generally the Mexico. They came in from Canada too, by the way, a lot. But generally speaking, on the southern border. And what a shame it is that we are now working very hard to get them out, get the criminals out, get the murderers out, the drug dealers, the mentally insane, get them out. They dropped the mentally insane in our country too. And this was all done by the Biden administration. It's a disgrace that we have to work so hard. And then we have judges that try and protect these people, but they didn't protect us when the people were being let in. But to get them out is never easy with these people. So I think we're doing a great job. The border is the best it's ever been. It's even as strong as it was. I had a great, solid border. I think it might even be tougher right now and stronger. So people are coming into our country, but they're coming in legally. We have a legal process, and we have that moving along properly, because we need people to come into our country, but we want people that can love our country and cherish our country. So that's where we are. And with that, any questions?
Mr. President, the European Union reaction to the markets today, and would you be open to a pause in tariffs to allow for negotiations?
Well, we're not looking at that. We have many, many countries that are coming to negotiate deals with us, and they're going to be fair deals. And in certain cases, they're going to be paying substantial tariffs. There'll be fair deals. As you know, I spoke this morning with the Prime Minister of Japan, and we had a very good conversation. They're coming. And I said, one thing, you're going to have to open up your country, because we sold no cars, like 0 cars in Japan, and they sold millions of cars into our country. They don't really take our agriculture, a little bit of it just to keep us slightly happy, but they don't take what they're supposed to be taking. So we have a great relationship with Japan. We're going to keep it that way, but they're coming in to meet, and other countries are coming in. With China, as you know, against my statement, they put a 34% tariff on above what their ridiculous tariffs were already. And I said, if that tariff isn't removed by tomorrow at 12 o'clock, we're putting a 50% tariff on above the tariffs that we put on. So they've gone for years. They've become a rich country because of people, again, that were in the White House that allowed this to happen. hundreds of billions of dollars a year they'd make on us on trade, and it shouldn't be that way. And I have a great relationship with President Xi. I hope it's going to stay that way. I have great respect for China, but they can't do this with just, we're going to have one shot at this, and no other president's going to do this, what I'm doing. And I'll tell you what, it's an honor to do it because we have been just destroyed, what they've done to our system. You know, we have $36 trillion of debt for a reason. And the reason is that people allowed it to get that way. So we'll be talking to China. We'll be talking to a lot of different countries. And I think, you know, if we can make a really fair deal and a good deal for the United States, not a good deal for others. This is America first. It's now America first. And we didn't put America first. We put America last. The people that were in the Oval Office put America last, and we're not going to stand for it. Yeah.
With Iran.
Two questions. Do you expect any of these deals to be made before April 9th? And secondly, there have been some mixed messages from your administration. You're talking about negotiations, and yet others in your administration are saying that these tariffs are actually permanent. What is the action?
Well, it could be. They can both be true. There can be permanent tariffs, and there can also be negotiations because there are things that we need beyond tariffs. We need open borders. You know, we almost had a deal with China where we're going to open up China. It was almost done. Some of you remember it during my first term, and it was very disappointing. We ended up making a great deal. $50 billion worth of product was sold. $50 billion. You'd like that in Israel. And I made that deal, but it wasn't the deal that I wanted. It was the deal that I wanted was that, plus they were going to open up China so that our companies could go into China and compete with other countries and China for the, you know, for a large number of people. And at the very end, that deal was terminated, and we went to a piece of the deal. And so there are a lot of things outside of tariffs, but tariffs are very important. But there are a lot of things like opening up countries that were totally closed. China is essentially a closed country. In fact, it is a closed country. And what they do is they charge tariffs so that if you sell cars or if you sell anything, nobody's going to buy it because the price is out of control. But that's true with a lot of other countries also. So we're going to get fair deals and good deals with every country. And if we don't, we're going to have nothing to do with them. They're not going to be allowed to participate in the United States.
Mr. President,
Many of time. This gentleman is all day long.
Mr. President, thank you for the chance. Many of Palestinian Americans who voted for you and not for Biden because you've promised them to end the war in Gaza.
Very honored by that vote, too.
The war is still going on and there's no hostage deal. Do you have any update on that?
Well, I'd like to see the war stop, and I think the war will stop at some point that won't be in the too distant future. Right now we have a problem with hostages. We're trying to get the hostages out. We got quite a few of them out, but it's a long process. It shouldn't be that long. We have a big problem that we've done. I think I'll ask Pete to maybe talk about it for a second, because a lot of people are asking. The Houthis, we've been very tough and very successful militarily. We've really damaged them badly. These were people shooting down ships and other things, by the way, flying objects like airplanes. And we've put a major hurt on the Houthis, which nobody's been able to do. We've really hit them hard, and they know it, and they don't know what to do. And it's every night, night after night. And we've gotten many of their leaders and their experts. They're experts on missiles. I mean, they actually make missiles. Nobody thought that. But they make missiles. They're highly sophisticated, and they're very tough. But they've been very badly damaged. Nobody else was able to do that but us. Pete, you want to discuss that, please?
Yes, sir. It's been a bad 3 weeks for the Houthis, and it's about to get worse. It's been a devastating campaign, whether it's underground facilities, weapons manufacturing, bunkers, troops in the open, air defense assets. We are not going to relent. And it's only to get more unrelenting until the Houthis declare they will stop shooting at our ships. And we've been very clear with the Iranians as well. They should not continue to provide support to the Houthis, and that message has been made very clear. So we have a lot more options and a lot more pressure to apply, and we know, because we see the reports, how devastating this campaign has been in them, and we will not relent.
We have a great military. There's no military like our military. And despite Biden having given a lot, but nevertheless a pretty small piece, but it was a lot of our military away in Afghanistan, and one of the dumbest situations, I think, and maybe the most embarrassing situation we've ever been involved in, that short period of time in Afghanistan. What a disgrace that was, but left a lot of our military behind. Left. You see them in their annual parades where they're parading trucks that are armor-plated and different things that they can't. But it's many billions of dollars we left behind. But despite that, we have a tremendous military. That was a very small portion because we rebuilt the military during my first term, and we have great things happening with our military. We also essentially approved a budget, which is in the facility, you'll like to hear this, of $1 trillion, $1 trillion, and nobody's seen anything like it. We have to build our military, and we're very cost conscious, but the military is something that we have to build, and we have to be strong because you got a lot of bad forces out there now. So we're going to be approving a budget, and I'm proud to say, actually, the biggest one we've ever done for the military. We're cutting other things that were under DOGE, but under a lot of other. When you look at a woman getting $2 billion for environmental, and it had nothing to do with environmental, and they had $100 in the bank, and they give her $2 billion. Many of those cases, all that stuff is going to be cut out. But we are getting a very, very powerful military. We have things under order now, the likes of which we've never had before. We've never had the kind of aircraft, the kind of missiles, anything that we have ordered. And it's in many ways too bad that we have to do it, because hopefully we're not going to have to use it. But the military is very, very powerful, and it's going to remain that way.
How do you, Mr. President,
Yes, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to ask you about Iran, because this is the first time we hear that the U.S. is having a direct contact with the Iranians. Is it possible to give us some more information at what level the U.S. is
High level,
represented?
very high level. Yeah.
And
We're dealing with the Iranians. We have a very big meeting on Saturday, and we're dealing with them directly. You know, a lot of people say, oh, maybe you're going through surrogates, or you're not dealing directly, you're dealing through other countries. No, we're dealing with them directly, and maybe a deal is going to be made. That would be great. It'll be really great for Iran, I can tell you that. But hopefully, we're not going to have to get into that. We are meeting very importantly on Saturday at almost the highest level, and we'll see how it works out. Please.
how do you ensure, Mr. President, that these tariffs don't drive U.S. trading partners into the hands of the Chinese? That they
I'm not worried about it. I'm not worried about it. If they want to be in the hands of the U.S., they don't want to be in the hands of the Chinese. And the Chinese have turned out to be really not very good at that. People that are with us, they're with us. But we cannot be taken advantage of any longer. I used to watch these deals for years. I've been talking about it for years. You know, I've been talking about it for 35 years, how our country is being ripped off. I mean, 30 years ago it was Japan, then it was something else, then it was another group, then it was China. China's doing the best job of it, frankly. And it's just not going to happen, not going to happen.
Mr. President,
you said it may
the EU
take.
has said that they have.
And so we've been listening to a discussion there in the Oval Office. President Trump alongside Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu meeting face to face. And the president there talking about many things, including, of course, tariffs. Another day where the markets have been going all over the place. They're flat at the moment, but he talked about other countries have been calling to make deals, including Japan. Netanyahu said Israel will eliminate the trade deficit rapidly. And then on China, he said we will slap a 50% tariff on China if they don't drop the 34% tariff they put on us, the United States, in retaliation to the tariff we put on them, the United States, 34% last week as well. A lot to follow there. And he also announced, perhaps very importantly, that the U.S. is going to have direct talks with Iran on Saturday. Let's bring in Chief White House correspondent Nancy Cordes. That was only 18 minutes of dialogue there, and a lot was discussed. What did you hear?
Hey, Maurice. Well, we saw Prime Minister Netanyahu taking one of the many tacks that world leaders have been considering in response to these tariffs that President Trump imposed last week on the rest of the world. He slapped a 17% tariff on Israel, and now you had the Prime Minister sitting there next to President Trump saying that he is going to work to very quickly eliminate the trade deficit with the United States. Why is this important? Well, President Trump has made it very clear that one of the things that angers him the most is the fact that there are many countries who sell more goods to the United States than they buy from the U.S. And Netanyahu clearly knows that, so he says he is going to right that situation. It won't be so easy for some other countries, however, Maurice, especially poorer countries who sell goods to the United States cheaply and can't necessarily afford to buy as many goods as they sell. Nevertheless, this is one approach. We've seen a number of approaches today. Bangladesh, for example, asking the White House to impose a 90-day pause on the tariffs on that country, and EU countries offering to zero out their tariffs on cars if the U.S. does the same. Every country trying to figure out exactly what might work here, Maurice.
Okay, Nancy Cordes, thank you. Let's bring in our Chief Washington correspondent, Major Garrett. Major, Commerce Secretary Lutnick, he was on yesterday with Margaret Brennan on Face the Nation. She asked him directly a number of times, are these tariffs for negotiation? What's the deal here? And he said they are serious. They are not for negotiation. Trump is not kidding. What did you hear today as he said that, look, everyone's been calling Japan, they want to make a deal? What did you hear?
Right. The president said they can be both, a negotiating tool and permanent. We don't know. The markets are roiled because of that uncertainty, Maurice. The Dow Jones Industrial Average, just as an example, traded within a range of 2,000 points today alone. Up and down, up and down. The market's moving on inferences drawn from social media posts, things that administration officials said over the weekend or said this morning, always trying to figure out exactly what the horizon, time-wise and magnitude of this tariff policy for the President of the United States will be. Because of that uncertainty, traders don't know which direction to go. That is probably going to continue as this week plays out, because the president says it can be permanent or it can be a negotiating thing. They cannot possibly be both, not for the long haul, but for the next hour, the next day, maybe for all this week, they can be. That volatility will inevitably continue. And just to pick up on what Nancy and you noted, Maurice, it is significant, deeply significant, that the president said there will be very high-level direct talks with the Iranians this Saturday. And he also said it will be very dangerous for Iran if there isn't a deal. And with the Israeli prime minister sitting right next to him, the world can fairly infer from that if these talks don't create an arrangement satisfactory to the President of the United States, the next option, the one the Israelis have been considering for months, if not years, would be a military assault on Iran in order to degrade or eliminate its pursuit of a nuclear weapon. That hangs very heavily over these direct talks on Saturday, and it is breaking news for the president to announce those talks will occur.
Most certainly. Okay, Major Garrett, thank you so much. As the president said, they are getting close to dangerous territory with Iran. All right, let's bring in our Money Watch correspondent, Kelly O'Grady. Wild day on the markets. Once again, 3 extraordinary days we have been watching here. Today, right now, the markets appear to be flat at the moment. What's going on?
Well, look, we've talked about long-term gain, short-term pain. Investors are focused on the short term. Why? Because when a company reports their earnings and they say, I'm making less money and my profits are going down because of tariffs and consumers are spending less, investors don't want to be a part of that. And if our team can actually pull up the Dow, I want to show you exactly how that short-term view and volatility impacted. So China over the weekend pretty much closed the door on negotiations. That's why you see that big red there. There's so much in the red when we opened. And then there's that little green. There's a little bit of hope based on a report that turned out not to be true, that there would be a 90-day pause. Investors got excited. Then the White House came out and said, you know what? that's not true. And in fact, we're going to have more tariffs against China potentially. All of that short term, that's how investors are reacting. The market's not the economy, but investors are trading on the what if, Maurice.
Okay, we're all watching. Kelly O'Grady, many thanks to you. And our coverage will continue on CBS News 24/7. Your local news ad tonight on the CBS TV News. We'll have a full roundup for you. This has been a CBS News special report. I'm Maurice Dubois.
President Trump meeting today with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel. We just heard them speak there in the Oval Office, in addition to a CBS News special report talking everything from tariffs to direct talks, it sounds like, between the U.S. and Iran this weekend. For more, let's bring in CBS News White House reporter Aaron Navarro. Aaron, what were your top lines and takeaways from this Oval Office spray, as they say?
Yeah, the big news, as you mentioned, is President Trump announcing that there would be direct talks with Iran on Saturday, potentially about their nuclear capabilities. Trump was asked, trying to get more details on there, and said that, quote, officials of almost the highest level will be talking to them. But it's notable that he said direct talks in particular, no intermediary countries involved, directly talking to Iran this Saturday. Netanyahu on tariffs told President Trump, as we have known, that they have eliminated their trade deficit with the United States and their trade barriers, potential regulations when it comes to food or technology, and that Israel could, quote, be a model for other countries looking to negotiate with President Trump. Interestingly enough, from what I heard, President Trump did not say if he would remove the tariffs on Israel, despite what seemed as their good faith measure. That's something to be watching in the next couple of days. And also, President Trump was asked, are these tariffs going to be permanent? Are you open to negotiations, given the mixed signals we're hearing from White House officials in the most recent days? And Trump seemed to indicate that both options are available, specifically, though, when it comes to the European Union, who offered to eliminate their taxes on cars imported from the United States. President Trump was asked if that's a good enough move, and he said, no, it is not.
Let's talk a little bit more about the tariffs between the U.S. and Israel. We've had a trade agreement with them since 1985. Netanyahu saying that they dropped their 17% tariffs against U.S. imports over the weekend. The president not committing to dropping the 17% reciprocal tariff against Israel. But what are the likely next steps, and what do we know? I know that, for example, in 2022, some of the biggest these are U.S. exports to Israel, stone, glass, metals. Exports from Israel to the U.S. in 2023 included diamonds, integrated circuits, and broadcasting equipment.
Yeah, the thought is it could be contingent as well on the other big topic on President Trump's mind when it comes to Israel, and that is what is happening in Gaza. And we heard from Prime Minister Netanyahu that said that he and Steve Witkoff, Trump's assigned special envoy in the Middle East, are working on another hostage deal to get that done. They talked about neighboring countries that would accept Palestinians should they choose to go there. But you're right in that President Trump did not say if he would remove the tariffs. I see it as an indication that he wants to see where this hostage deal goes first. But Netanyahu certainly is making that first step by saying they are, quote, eliminating outright the trade deficit between the U.S. and Israel.
Aaron, what did the president say about the military budget as he and Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency work to cut down on federal costs? And what did the defense secretary say about the situation with the Houthi rebels in Yemen?
Yeah, primarily when it comes to the Houthis, Secretary Hegseth said that they would not stop, that they would be relentless, and wanted to send a message to Iran to no longer remotely support the Houthis. So that's what I heard from that.
Okay, yes, and we did hear the president talk about increasing the defense budget of our military. Aaron, stay with us if you can, because I want to bring in Courtney Keeley right now. Courtney is a Middle Eastern reporter and expert for us for CBS News. She joins us now in Studio 57. Tell me the significance of these direct talks Saturday between the United States and Iran.
Well, with all the noise at this semi-presser in the Oval Office, not an official presser, it was a real standout when President Trump said direct talks with Iran starting Sunday. And then somebody followed up with the question and said, did you say direct? Because there's a question of whether it was indirect or direct, and that's been going back and forth. And Trump said direct. Trump said high level. And before he said this, Netanyahu said he would like to see that Trump and Netanyahu, they had spoken about Iran. Netanyahu has always said they'd like to see what's a Libyan model, which means the complete elimination of a nuclear program. That would be what happened in Libya, but that's very unlikely to be seen in Iran. All the experts, and including news reports coming out of Iran, is that's very unlikely that Iran would dismantle their nuclear program. Experts have said that they're pretty much ready to use nuclear energy for a nuclear bomb. And they've already kind of held that. It's almost like not turning on the keys, not manufacturing one, or if they do, it's deep in the bunkers. There's been a military buildup in the region, especially on this island called Diego Garcia, that many people have never heard about but are hearing recently since the attacks on the Houthis by the U.S. Diego Garcia is in the Indian Ocean. And we have, the U.S. does B-2 bombers there. They've satellite imagery have counted about 6. There are THAAD battery missiles in Israel, defensive missile program to keep missiles from flying into Iran. So all these movements happening in case to do with the Houthis, to do with Hamas, but also Iran. So we'll have to see, and I've been reading, checking out to texting sources in Iran saying, what are they saying in real time? What are we going to hear? Now, I want to tell you something really interesting that I've been looking into recently. During President Trump's first term, he eliminated the head of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard force, Qasem Soleimani. And according to Iranians that would like to see an end to the regime and the Ayatollah, and they see them less as clerics now, they see them as oligarchs, people who have benefited off the system like an Assad did in Syria. They want them out, and they actually call, some people in Tehran refer to Netanyahu as Uncle Benny, and some people want to see Trump doing something. So there's not, I mean, it could raise nationalism in Iran, but there are people that need change in Iran that want to see the execution stop and the human rights abuse stop. So we have to see how he's going to square all this in these opening remarks.
How is President Trump's posture toward Iran different from previous administrations?
Like I said, he's liked. He's liked by the average person in Iran because he did something against the regime when he took out Qasem Soleimani during his first term. That was a bold missile strike on him when he was in Iraq. Qasem Soleimani really squired himself around the Middle East and had a very prominent Instagram profile. It was sort of like, I'm here, I'm head of al-Quds, and I can go anywhere I want in the Middle East, until Trump took him out. And it was very, very a dangerous move to see what the retaliation was. Retaliation didn't come. Now we've seen Iran evolved in this back and forth since the Hamas massacre, since the Israeli-Hamas war. And we've seen in the last year or so, we've seen Israel launch a strike. We've seen Iran launch a strike and having those missiles shot out of the air. They were deliberate. The first time last spring, they waited 10 days, sort of let all the allies of Israel get ready and in place to shoot those missiles out of the sky. And then there was one Friday night in the fall that wasn't as big. It was sort of like, we're here, we're watching you, we're prepared. President Trump has come in, like I said, he's really upped an arsenal of military equipment, everything from aircraft carriers to bombers to battery pack missile defense systems in Israel and in this island of Diego Garcia. So they're ready in defense, but he's also going in the offense to talk to top officials. Will it be the Grand Ayatollah? I'm not sure.
What did you hear in terms of ceasefire negotiations in this conversation?
I heard that Steve Witkoff is on it. I heard that Prime Minister Netanyahu, clearly speaking to his own country, said the evil of Hamas has to be eradicated. That means really that he's not ready to stop those military operations against Hamas, which does make a ceasefire harder to agree upon, but also that he wants to see the living hostages out. President Trump has said he wants to see Idan Alexander out, the Israeli-American out. It's being parsed as a number game, which is really hard to take when you know it's lives. Right. We have to see what Witkoff comes up with. Macron was meeting with both Egypt and Jordan. They all got on a call with Trump today before the Netanyahu meeting. So it's a full press, court press going on in a lot of diplomatic circles, Arab, European, and U.S. and Israel directly.
Okay, Courtney Keeley, thank you so much. Let's go back to Aaron Navarro. Aaron, what more can you tell us about that call? Per a Jordanian official, the president spoke with Emmanuel Macron, Sisi, Abdullah ahead of this meeting with Prime Minister Netanyahu.
Yeah, this call was organized by French President Macron, where they really advocated to Trump when it comes to humanitarian aid, getting into Gaza, pushing for a ceasefire, just generally advocating for the Palestinians impacted by the Israeli military strikes. They also talked to Trump about creating, quote, conditions and mobilizing international efforts to, quote, end the suffering of the Palestinian people, and said that they would remain in close coordination in the coming days. And one other thing, I'm just reading as Trump is talking, he was asked if he was going to take off that 17% tariff on Israel. He said, quote, maybe, maybe not, and said that they were talking about a whole new trade deal between the U.S. and one of its closest allies, Israel.
Aaron, for anybody who might just be joining us, can you please give a recap of some of the top lines of what we heard from President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu there in the Oval Office?
Yeah, the biggest thing is Trump announcing that on Saturday the U.S. will be having, quote, direct talks with Iran, potentially about their nuclear capabilities. Notable that it is direct. There are no intermediary countries kind of facilitating that conversation this upcoming weekend. On tariffs, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said he told President Trump they will eliminate the trade deficit between Israel and the U.S. in addition to trade barriers. And also Netanyahu announced that Steve Witkoff, Trump's envoy in the Middle East, is working with Israel on a new hostage deal as it relates to Gaza and Israel.
Aaron, we have obviously seen the markets tumble, make some gains. It's been quite a roller coaster ride for all three major United States indexes. What can you tell us about developments over the weekend in terms of the president's tariffs policies and whether there's any indication that there could be any sort of backing off or negotiation at play behind the scenes?
Well, just now in the Oval Office, President Trump was asked if he could see any pause on tariffs as it relates to certain countries. He said he could not see that. In general, White House officials and the president in just the past 24 hours have signaled they are open to negotiations with other countries. The U.S. Trade Representative said over 50 countries have already reached out to begin negotiations with the U.S. You're seeing some already say they're not going to retaliate with their own tariffs, such as Bangladesh and India. Trump said this morning, quote, tough but fair parameters are being set. But you saw him just now and are seeing him in the Oval Office really stand by his move on tariffs, said that, quote, we have one shot at this, and his goal to bring back manufacturing back to the U.S., which is certainly a bet just given the time it could take and what we're seeing out of China right now in their own response of reciprocal tariffs.
Let's talk about that, because we know that the president in the beginning of his second term hit China with tariffs on April 2nd, the day he called Liberation Day in America, more tariffs on top. China did not sort of bend over like maybe some experts were thinking or economists were predicting. Instead, China doubled down and said, OK, we'll see your tariff. We'll give you a reciprocal tariff of 34%. That, of course, as we saw, sent the stock markets tumbling toward the end of last week. And then we saw today the president doubling down and saying if China doesn't remove that reciprocal tariff, that he would place an additional 50% tariff. So I believe a few hours ago, you told me that would be a 104% tariff that China could potentially be looking at.
That's right. So that includes the 50%, which Trump said if China does not back down from their own response of tariffs, that he would implement that starting tomorrow, Tuesday. Now, that 50% is on top of a 20% tariff he applied on China, blaming them for trafficking when it comes to fentanyl, as well as the 34% tariffs that he announced last Wednesday on what the White House called Liberation Day. And you're right that Chinese officials are not backing down. Even leading up to last Wednesday, you saw Chinese officials say if it's a trade war the U.S. wants, it is one that China will not back down from. But certainly it's China and the European Union that Trump has really showed his gripes with when it comes to the trade deficit as kind of the impetus of this tariff war. And we're seeing him take escalatory actions potentially in the next 24 hours.
Okay, Aaron Navarro, thank you so much for all of your reporting there at the White House. We appreciate it. And earlier on CBS News 24/7, we told you that the Trump administration was asking the Supreme Court to intervene in the case of a Maryland father mistakenly deported to an El Salvador mega prison. There was actually a previous judge's order preventing him from going back because of danger that he potentially faced going back to his native country. The administration was petitioning the Supreme Court to stop a district court ruling that they had to bring him back to the United States by midnight tonight. We're just learning Chief Justice John Roberts has issued an administrative stay that temporarily blocks that court order. So it looks like they may not have to be beholden to that midnight deadline. So much more at the top of the hour. CBS News 24/7 continues. Stay with us.
Can see clearly now. Clearly, CBS Mornings.
Weekdays on CBS.
Yeah!
Tony, coming?
No, I'm gonna stick around for an hour.
CBS Mornings Plus with Adriana Diaz and Tony DeCopel, right after CBS Mornings.
It's just like mornings.
Plus fun.
Oh, yeah, it's gonna be a bright, sunshiny day.
Politics isn't a game. When do consumers